There is a psalm in the Word of God that carries power, protection, and divine healing for every believer who dares to stand on it. It is not just beautiful language written centuries ago. It is not just something to be read in times of trouble and then forgotten when things improve. It is a living covenant promise filled with authority, and it reveals the heart of a faithful God who watches over His people. When you understand it, believe it, and boldly declare it, you position yourself to experience the reality of what it promises. In Psalm 91, the very first line establishes the foundation for everything that follows. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. That word, dwelleth, is not casual, it is intentional. It speaks of consistency, relationship, and habitation. To dwell means to remain, to stay, to make your home there. It is not a quick visit when fear knocks on your door. It is not a temporary shelter you run into when symptoms appear. It is a lifestyle of abiding in God's presence and trusting in His protection. The secret place is not a physical location. It is a spiritual position. It is where your heart rests in confidence, where your mind is anchored in truth, and where your spirit is fully persuaded that God is who He says He is. When you dwell in that place, you are not moved by every report you hear. You are not shaken by every negative symptom. You are not overwhelmed by every threatening circumstance. You live under the shadow of the Almighty, and a shadow can only exist where there is closeness. You cannot be under someone's shadow if you are far away. Abiding under the shadow of the Almighty speaks of nearness. It speaks of protection that is constant and reliable. The Almighty is not weak. He is not uncertain. He is not limited by human conditions. When you dwell in Him, you place yourself under the covering of His power. That covering does not depend on your feelings. It depends on His faithfulness. Even when emotions fluctuate and circumstances change, His shadow remains steady. Many people visit the secret place occasionally. They pray when they are afraid. They quote a verse when they feel pressure. But dwelling is deeper than that. Dwelling means you meditate on His promises daily. You speak them consistently. You think in line with them. You allow His word to shape your responses instead of reacting out of fear. When challenges arise, your first instinct is not panic but trust, because you have made your habitation in Him. Living in the secret place changes your perspective. Instead of seeing yourself as vulnerable and exposed, you see yourself as covered and guarded. Instead of feeling alone in the battle, you become conscious of divine presence. That awareness produces peace, and peace strengthens faith. Fear cannot dominate a heart that is fully persuaded of God's protection. Anxiety cannot rule a mind that is anchored in covenant promises. To dwell also means to depend. It means you acknowledge that your security is not in your own strength, not in your own wisdom, and not in circumstances around you. Your confidence rests in the Most High. When you wake up in the morning, you recognize that you are under His shadow. When you face a challenge, you remind yourself that you are under His covering. This steady awareness becomes your spiritual atmosphere. As you continue to abide, the truth of this psalm becomes more real to you than the natural evidence around you. You begin to speak differently. You begin to expect differently. You begin to stand differently. Faith grows because it is being nourished daily by the Word. And when faith rises, fear loses its voice. The psalm continues with a powerful declaration. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. That word surely is not weak language. It is confident. It is settled. It leaves no room for doubt. Deliverance is not presented as a possibility. It is stated as a certainty for the one who dwells in faith. The snare of the fowler represents hidden traps, unseen dangers, subtle attacks that are designed to catch you off guard. Pestilence speaks of sickness, disease, and destructive forces that attempt to invade and weaken the body. Deliverance means rescue. It means being brought out of danger and set into safety. It is not simply surviving an attack. It is being protected from its full impact. When this psalm says He delivers, it reveals the nature of God as a protector who is actively involved in the lives of His people. He is not distant or unaware. He sees every hidden snare before you ever step near it. He knows every threat before it forms. His deliverance operates both before and during the attack. The snare is often subtle. It may come in the form of negative thoughts, fear-filled reports, or discouraging words. It may come through pressure that slowly wears down confidence. A snare works by deception. It is designed to trap without warning. But when you walk in awareness of God's promises, you are not easily entangled. The light of His Word exposes what darkness tries to conceal. Faith gives you discernment. Instead of reacting in panic, you respond with trust. Pestilence, in its simplest understanding, refers to disease and widespread affliction. It represents anything that attempts to invade your health and disturb your peace. The promise here is not that pestilence does not exist in the world. It is that you are not left defenseless against it. Deliverance from pestilence speaks of divine protection and healing power that supersedes natural threats. When fear spreads, you remain anchored. When others are overwhelmed, you stand in confidence. Many people focus more on the pestilence than on the promise. They talk about symptoms continually. They rehearse negative reports repeatedly. They allow fear to dominate their conversation. But the psalm directs attention to deliverance. It shifts the focus from the trap to the rescuer, from the disease to the healer. What you magnify becomes greater in your perception. When you magnify the promise, your faith grows stronger than the threat. Deliverance also requires agreement. You must align your words and thoughts with what God has declared. Instead of saying, "I am trapped," you say, "He delivers me." Instead of declaring, "This will overtake me," you declare, "I am protected." Faith is not denial, it is agreement with a higher truth. It recognizes that circumstances may be real, but they are not final. God's promise has the final authority. There is also timing in deliverance. Sometimes it is prevention, where the snare never touches you. Sometimes it is restoration, where you are brought out of what tried to harm you. In both cases, the outcome reveals His faithfulness. The confidence of surely removes hesitation. It builds expectation. It creates boldness in prayer and firmness in confession. As you meditate on this promise, fear begins to lose its grip. The imagination that once pictured worst-case scenarios starts to envision protection and victory. Your heart becomes settled in the assurance that you are not alone in facing threats. The Almighty stands between you and destruction. His deliverance is not fragile or uncertain. It is strong, intentional, and rooted in covenant faithfulness that does not waver under pressure. Another powerful promise unfolds in Psalm 91 when it declares, "He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler." This language is deeply personal. It paints a picture of nearness, tenderness, and unwavering protection. The imagery of feathers and wings speaks of care, not distance. It reveals a God who does not merely issue commands from afar, but draws His people close under His covering. To be covered is to be shielded from exposure. Exposure brings vulnerability. It leaves a person open to attack, fear, and uncertainty. But the promise of covering removes that vulnerability. Under His wings there is safety. Under His wings there is rest. Under His wings there is trust. Trust grows in proximity. The closer you are to His presence, the stronger your confidence becomes. You cannot truly trust someone you refuse to stay near. Dwelling close to Him strengthens your assurance that you are protected. The verse continues by declaring that His truth becomes your shield and buckler. A shield is defensive armor. It stands between you and the attack. A buckler is a smaller shield used in close combat, offering precise and personal protection. Together they represent complete defense. But notice what forms this protection: His truth, not human opinion, not changing circumstances, not emotional reasoning. His truth is stable. It does not shift with seasons or trends. When sickness attempts to speak, truth answers with promise. When fear whispers doubt, truth speaks assurance. The shield of truth blocks fiery darts of anxiety, lies, and discouragement. Every negative thought that tries to penetrate your mind meets resistance when you are established in God's Word. Without truth, the mind becomes a battlefield easily invaded by fear. With truth, you stand guarded and steady. Trust is the key that activates this covering. Trust is not passive. It is a deliberate decision to rely on God's character and Word, even when circumstances appear uncertain. Under His wings, you choose to believe that His protection is greater than any visible threat. You choose to rest instead of panic. You choose to speak faith instead of fear. That choice strengthens your spiritual position. There is also intimacy in this promise. Feathers and wings symbolize care and warmth. Protection is not cold or mechanical. It is compassionate. It reflects a relationship between a loving father and his children. When you understand that you are covered by His presence, fear begins to lose authority over your emotions. Instead of reacting to every report, you respond from a place of assurance. His truth as a shield means you must know it. A shield unused provides no protection. You must take hold of the Word, meditate on it, and speak it. When symptoms attempt to dominate your thinking, truth declares healing. When pressure rises, truth declares peace. The more you rehearse His promises, the stronger your shield becomes in daily life. Close combat requires awareness. The buckler suggests personal engagement. Attacks sometimes come directly, not subtly. They confront you with bold threats. In those moments, truth still stands as defense. You do not fight with panic. You stand with conviction. You lift the shield of promise and refuse to accept lies as reality. As you continue trusting under His wings, a calm strength develops inside you. The storms may rage around, but there is quietness within. The shield of truth remains firm. Fear cannot easily penetrate a heart anchored in covenant promises. Anxiety cannot dominate a mind guarded by unwavering truth. Trust deepens as you recognize that His covering is constant, His protection is deliberate, and His Word remains an unbreakable defense against every assault that attempts to disturb your peace. The psalm continues with a bold assurance. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. Fear is addressed directly. It does not say that terror will never attempt to appear. It does not deny that arrows may be flying. It declares that you shall not be afraid. That is a position of authority over emotion. Fear may knock, but it does not have permission to rule. It may attempt to speak, but it does not have the final word. Night often represents the unknown. It symbolizes those moments when clarity is absent and imagination tries to fill the silence with worst-case scenarios. In the dark, sounds seem louder and threats seem closer. Terror by night includes anxious thoughts, restless worry, and the quiet pressure that tries to steal peace when everything is still. Yet the promise says, "You shall not be afraid." That means your confidence is not dependent on visible light. It is rooted in unseen assurance. Even when you cannot see clearly, you are not alone. Even when circumstances feel uncertain, you are still covered. The arrow that flies by day represents visible challenges. These are the attacks you can identify, the reports you can read, the symptoms you can feel. Unlike the hidden fears of the night, these arrows are obvious. They demand attention. They try to provoke reaction. But the psalm declares freedom from fear in both conditions, hidden threats and visible ones. Whether the attack is subtle or direct, your response remains the same steadfast trust. Fear is more than a feeling. It is a force that attempts to paralyze faith. It magnifies the problem and minimizes the promise. When fear takes root, it distorts perception. Small challenges appear overwhelming. Temporary symptoms feel permanent. But when you choose not to be afraid, you are not denying reality. You are placing it under a higher authority. You are acknowledging that God's protection outweighs every threat. Refusing fear requires discipline. Thoughts must be monitored. Words must be guarded. You cannot entertain every anxious imagination and expect peace to remain. When fear attempts to whisper, You answer with truth. When doubt tries to settle, you replace it with promise. This is not passive living, it is active faith. It is a daily decision to stand firm regardless of what tries to disturb your confidence. Terror by night can also represent private battles, struggles no one else sees, quiet concerns about health, finances, family, or the future. In those silent moments, faith becomes deeply personal. You are not relying on public encouragement. You are resting in private assurance. The absence of fear does not mean the absence of challenges. It means the presence of unwavering trust. The arrow by day can represent public pressure, reports, conversations, visible circumstances that attempt to shake stability. These arrows may come through negative news, discouraging diagnoses, or harsh words. They are meant to provoke reaction. Yet the psalm establishes a boundary: you shall not be afraid. Fear is not your portion. Confidence is. When you meditate on this promise, courage begins to replace anxiety. The mind that once rehearsed worry begins rehearsing truth. The heart that once trembled becomes steady. Peace is not accidental. It is cultivated by choosing faith over fear repeatedly. Every time you refuse to give fear a voice, you strengthen your spiritual foundation. Living without fear does not mean ignoring danger. It means trusting that you are not facing it alone. It means believing that protection surrounds you even when threats appear close. It means standing in calm assurance when others are overwhelmed. Confidence grows as you consistently align your thoughts with promise instead of panic. The more you dwell in that truth, the less authority fear has over your emotions, your decisions, and your outlook.